I take the privilege and honor of welcoming our speaker for the webinar, Dr. Debra Ferdinand James. Dr. Debra is from the University of West Indies, from the School of Education, and she has a very good experience in the same field of teaching. She has been teaching the post-secondary levels in both the Caribbean and in the US for the past 20 years. She has a good specialization in the field of teaching by including people through curriculum inclusiveness, academic support, blended learning, and then mixed methods. These are her forte. Along with it, she also added Industry 4.0 into it. Dr. Debra is a well-renowned person and a person who is eminent to talk on the subject of research e-clinics. Today, I welcome Dr. Debra as she has all the parameters that fills for a webinar speaker. She has all the USAT CPM. She is from a university. She has a specialization. She has authored more than 24 papers, both individually and as a joint publication. And she has participated in a lot of conferences, presenting on her own and conducting many. And then she is a person who includes a lot of fellowships towards learning. And then she's a member of many forums. Being such an eminent person, I take this privilege in welcoming Dr. Debra for this evening. Evening for us and morning for you, Debra. And now I leave the floor to Tilak to go on with the expectations from the talk. Thank you.
Welcome, everyone. And I have tried to do some research on what Ms. Debra's research and what she's going to talk. I have seen a couple of YouTube videos and things. So what I could understand from that is, like, a lot of my friends, our friends also, they started doing research, and years go by, 4 years, 5 years, 10 years also. We ask him, what happened to your research? He say, oh, it's not yet complete, not yet complete, like that. And many is dropped out like that way. So that is what is our research, our e-clinics has helped to solve, and how it is solved and all this, we will learn from her talk today. Welcome, everyone. Please take over, Debra.
Thank you so much, Dr. Tilak. I'm going to share my presentation now. So welcome to my presentation entitled, let me just put that to the bottom, Research E-Clinics for Graduate Students. And I became interested in this topic after 4 years being in academia as a new PhD. And I recognized that my students were having lags in meeting their completion times for their final research theses and projects. And by the 50, I decided I had to do something about it. Because it was a bit frustrating. You keep writing the same edits on their drafts over and over, and you're seeing the problems, but there wasn't a remedy or an intervention to sort of get them through to the deadline and help them to move on with their lives. This would be after investing, 4 years of time and effort and finances. So this is why I did this research. And it would be remiss of me not to show you where I'm from. This is the Caribbean map right there, if you look off to the right of your screen. And we are just off the coast of Venezuela, sorry. And so we are just at the top of South America, if you want to get your bearings. And we are known for beautiful carnival worldwide, save for COVID-19 this year. We may have some restrictions there in holding carnival next year. And the music of our island is the steel pan, in the sense that it's our national instrument. It's the only musical instrument being invented in the 20th century, sorry. So we're very proud of our culture. So we hope when things go back to normal, we'll see you for Carnival sometime. So I will now present my outline. I will first talk about the recognition that the research has been given, the need for it, the theory that's informing it, what we did to pilot test, because as everything else, it's a new initiative and it was never done before, so we had to pilot test. And then I'll give you the student and faculty reactions and end with how we can adapt it to your needs. So it's been recognized with a merit award from the it's a university in the UK, and they held a competition and a conference. It's linked. The name of the competition was the Innovation in Teaching of Research Methodology Excellence Awards. And we made it after 3 rounds of competition with over 40 submissions. We made it to the final rounds, and we were one of the 12 finalists. I did apply for a grant from the university under the Campus Research and Publication Fund to do the research. We did have one research assistant work with us on the project and a Master of Philosophy student. And the work is published in the anthology of the 12 finalists case studies. So we are the second chapter in that publication. And so that endorses the research clinics and I would say the need for it. So let me just ask you as we begin, do you have challenges with your students, your graduate students, masters, and above, completing on their deadlines? And I'm not going to read your thoughts. I'm going to ask Dr. Raj to just field any comments or any questions that you'd have. Are you having challenges with, do your students graduate on time, or do you have them, they ask for extensions and so on?
I didn't see any participant put any questions.
Okay. So sometimes we don't really want to talk about, those things that are very troubling to address. But if but if we don't, somebody has to, because even now in the COVID-19 pandemic, you realize that students are even more stressed because, they're not physically on the university using their library resources. And so they're at home. They may have to share the computer with their spouse because they're working from home, and plus the children are at home, going to school online. So you have all those challenges now. So it even becomes a bigger challenge. And we need to, to look at some ways we can sort of manipulate and get through to the deadline. So that's what I hope these research clinics would do. So when I did my background research, at that time, it was a couple of years ago, 2015, 2016, 80% of our graduate students, mostly the master students, requested extensions on their research. The deadlines would usually be the 31st of May. So you can just imagine 80%, asking for extensions after May. That in itself tells you that they're really under some stress here. In addition to that, the personal challenges they experience with work, with family, and their studying, more so now in the pandemic. Time management is not always easy. The challenges that they would probably have, because not all are at the same ability range. I have found that academic writing is a big challenge for many students, and that poses sometimes a roadblock to their progress, because sometimes they don't summarize properly, they don't paraphrase, and they use a lot of quotes, and even so the in-text citations are not done in accordance with whatever referencing style you're using. We use APA here, and those challenges delay their progress. in addition, what I've found that some of them are not prepared adequately to do graduate research, and you see that in some of the gaps in how they approach their research. Some of that part of that problem is what I'm seeing is what I saw, sorry, is that they're not able to apply what they learn in the classroom outside the classroom to their research. And so that is where you find when you come into the supervision, you have to do a lot of hand holding. Because for some reason, students are not able to hit the ground running. As a matter of fact, when I went to apply for the grant to do the research, the the processing officer said to me, this is not only a problem for your department, this is a problem throughout the university. She said, we noticed that students get their A's and their B's in their coursework, but when it comes to transitioning to actually do the research, this is where you don't have the same kind of results. There are a lot of lags. Some of them don't ever complete, and it's a challenge. So all of that endorses why I should look into the topic. So we did a poll, and it was unanimous when I asked students initially, which areas of their research they're having challenges. Is it the introduction? Is it the literature review, the methodology, the data analysis? Is it discussion and inclusion and conclusions? They all said they needed help with all the chapters. So I wrote up the grant, and it was approved. Now, a little bit about the theory that informed the research e-clinics, because as you know, our practice is informed by theory. You must have some sort of theoretical foundation for the research. And so situated learning theory is what supports the research e-clinics. It's rooted in students' concerns and their needs, their questions. And so it is situated at that point in time. It meets them where they're at with their concerns and their questions and their needs. It also happens through interaction with others. Others, of course, being those who may be mentors, coaches, supervisors who can help them through their concerns and their needs and how best these could be resolved. And learning is situated, of course, at a specific time and place. And so it's not your regular course sort of interaction, but it's meeting a need in a specific situation at a specific time and place, and it is grounded in real life situations. It's not anything that's simulated or so. So this theory suited very well and supported the researchy clinics. So now we come to pilot testing. By this time, I have my grant. I am about to set up all my systems. I have my research assistant to help me along with data collection and in the research clinics. And so now I'll take you through the steps for the pilot testing. So the clinics aim to answer questions about students' research. Because what I've realized is that it's only when you reach at a certain point in your research that some questions arise. And where they're at now, they're heading for the deadline May 31st. So they'd have real questions about their research. It could be the method section, it could be data analysis, and so on. And so the supervisors are there to provide guidance. Sometimes students submit their drafts and the supervisors ask for revisions. And that is where the clinic, the lead researcher, would help and give guidance and resources as to how to go about doing the revisions. Mind you, we do not do the revisions for students, but we coach them, mentor them, answer questions, show where they can find the resources to move on. And those resources would be links to needed literature. And so we assist with that. We have the research assistant who fills that part of the clinic. So we have generally three clear aims. and now the stakeholders, those who are involved. So you have to have the grant approved from the university for their funding. So you get past that and you get your funding and your approval. And I had to work with the program coordinator in a particular program for the pilot test. I was actually a supervisor, a research supervisor for one of the master students in the program. And it was something like February, and the student had not finished. She was just actually on chapter one. And I said, if you are to meet this May 31st deadline, by now you should have your three chapters done and so on. And so there were lags. So I approached the program coordinator and I asked, whether or not this student is the only one in that situation. And she said, no. Matter of fact, many students are where that student is. So I worked along with the program coordinator, and she was part of the grant, signing off as the second person. And she encouraged and promoted and participated in the e-clinics with the students because, of course, she is closer to the students than I am. She runs the program and interact with them a lot. So your program coordinator is someone who is very important here, to encourage students and to promote the e-clinics. I again was the lead researcher, and so I would answer questions and giving guidance on how to go about doing the supervisor revisions. And then the research assistant mainly searched the databases for needed literature to support the students' research. She was trained, or she had a briefing as to how to use the online databases by the librarian. So that was one session. And so she was well prepared. She was able to manipulate the databases and find literature for the students. And of course, you have the students who would be participating. So those are the key stakeholders. Okay, so here's some of the logistics. Now, the students have a deadline for May 31st, but in that semester prior, that whole semester from January to May 31st, they all present their research proposals by between January to, let's say, early April or late March, and they get approval for their research. We try to make that at least in the first 3 months of the year. So they'll have enough time to collect data and do their analysis and so. And when students are presenting on the date and so on, I will sit in the graduate seminars and listen to their presentations and take note of where the challenges that they're having. Because after they present, the audience, which would be other graduate students and other faculty, would give them feedback as to how it can be improved. And so I will take note of those challenges, and I'll use it to help me prepare for the e-clinics in April. So there are topics, give me an idea of the kinds of literature review they would need, and that helps us to prepare better for the e-clinics in April. The e-clinics run in the Easter vacation period because we our target group are teachers, and so they do have a break during the Easter time here in Trinidad. We were predominantly Spanish settled, so that we are able to have holidays now for our Catholic celebrations like Easter. So it's convenient to them because they're not teaching and they have some downtime. So that's when we initially planned to run it during that time. And we do 5 clinics. We did it initially in 1 week. The first week would have been the introductory chapter and so on over the 5 days. Tuesday, the lit review methods on Wednesday, data analysis and findings on Thursday, and Friday, discussion and conclusion. And the clinics would be open for the entire day, and students don't have to come online as such because it's asynchronous. So as you do your research, you check the forums, you see what questions are being asked, and you post your question if you don't see one there in whichever chapter you need assistance. And so I would encourage, especially now in the pandemic, to do the forums asynchronously, because if you do a lot of video recordings, like live streaming and so on, some persons may not have high internet connectivity. Even if they want to watch the recording, sometimes you have that kind of buffering with the videos because of their connectivity. So only if it is a must, you would do an online session with them. It's better if you do it asynchronously. It's less stress for them, and they have the information there that others can refer to. They have the resources, the answers, and it's easier that way rather than have to put up a recording and then listen to it for a whole hour to get to the part, where you need an answer to a question. So I encourage that. And you use your learning management system, whatever you have, be it Moodle or Canvas, whatever you're using, and you open one discussion forum per chapter. And you explain what the forum is about, that they can post questions and get feedback. What you have to remember here is to remind them to read the forum before they post the questions, to avoid duplication in the questions. And we, the program coordinator and lead researcher and the assistant, we acted as research doctors, because these students that we were piloting the clinics with, they were in health promotion. And they are used to the term clinic, where you go and, yeah, if you're sick, you go and the doctor will take care of you. You tell him
Patient.
what pain you're feeling, or you don't know why you're feeling. Yes. So you're a patient, and the doctors will attend to you and they get you better. So we decided that we'd use the term e-clinics, research e-clinics, because they could relate very easily to that. And so they had no qualms about the way we term the clinics. And of course, the supervisors review the students' drafts, and we make sure when we in each forum we tell them that don't upload their drafts, because that is the role of their supervisor. If they have questions, they need resources, they need guidance, we will give them that. But we don't do the supervisor's work, because that would be imposing on what the supervisor has to do. You don't want that kind of tension. So you make it very clear in each of the forums that they're not to upload their drafts. When we give them the guidance, they revise it and then resubmit that to their supervisors. So those are basically the logistics you need. It's not that you have to have a grant to do this. You can do it voluntarily. But sometimes, you don't get, like people to really support you when you do things voluntarily. So if there's a remuneration, you get that kind of support. And so this is why we did it this way. But you don't necessarily have to. You can use all the free resources you have, and if you have really good volunteers to commit their time, you can do this too. So in sitting in the graduate seminars, some of the highlights, that over the years that are key, that I see coming up, and this is what we do in the research clinics. We show how you should revise them. The titles are sometimes very long; they're almost like sentences, and they don't use the verbs that you need to represent, or the terminology you need to represent, for example, qualitative, quantitative, mixed methods terms. The titles are um, not not in keeping with the norm. So the qualitative, you want to see something like exploration in there, perceptions, and so on. And your quantitative, you'd have whether or not you have a hypothesis. There's no significant difference, or you ask a question comparing variables and so on. And of course, with your mixed methods, you sometimes actually say it's a mixed methods study. You put that in the title, or you make reference to the design that you're using, the mixed methods design. And so those are some of the things we have to tighten up with the titles. They sometimes, and most times, the background to the problem is, it's not supported sufficiently by current research. So you have students telling you about No Child Left Behind, this policy. And that has been replaced a couple of years now by Every Child Should Succeed Act. So you can tell that, if you're going to still stay with, children being left behind and so on, of course your research is not going to be current because they have revised the act and they have named it Every Child Should Succeed. And sometimes they also in the background pay too much attention to policy. They can tell you all about the UNESCO policies, the educational policies in their country and so on. But the actual research that deals at the level of the research problem that they're having, be it untrained teachers in the classroom or underperforming students or whatever, those studies are sometimes lacking. And I think what happens once they get something down on paper and it relates to the topic, they're very comfortable with that. But you're not writing you're not doing a policy research. You're not doing policy documentation about education and so on. Yes, that has to be a context, but don't write at the policy level because that's not what your research is about. So there again, we have to help them, to refine that and get the problem and actually situate it in a way in the last paragraph in a very concise way, so we can see that this is what we need to know. This is still what is unsolved or needs to be addressed from the research that has been done. So those are some of the issues. I'll just go on. And again, the problem statement, when you pull it out, because you have to put that as a clear statement in the introductory chapter, and it's not always clearly linked, as I said, to the background. So they write a lot about the policies, and then when you come to the problem, it's actually a new statement that you are seeing, and it should really emerge from the background. So those things we address. And also the purpose statement, again, you have to put that clearly. It doesn't always meet the norms for qualitative, quantitative, and mixed methods. There are certain terminologies you use there. And sometimes they put the significance of the study as a purpose statement, which is that significance really deals with how the research will be used by the stakeholders who are experiencing whatever the problem is. And again, research questions, and you find it's the same thread. It's not worded in accordance with the terms and norms for qualitative, quantitative, and mixed methods. I wouldn't labor that too much. And again, you have that alignment problem. So you have the problem statement being out of sync with the purpose statement being out of sync with the research questions. So we always try to help them to make that alignment. The justification for the research design, not always clear. They may say they're doing case study when in truth and in fact it's survey research because they're only looking at perceptions. If you're doing a case study, you have to have multiple sources of data collection. So if you're only doing interviews or perceptions, well then you do a survey and you do a survey of this perceptions, but don't call it a case study because you then have to put in additional sources of data, your observations, apart from your interviews, document analysis, and so. And the data analysis, sometimes they present it, but not in relation to the research questions. So you have a difficulty really understanding how the data collected answer the research questions. So they write it up in themes for whatever the data collected and analyzed show, but they don't give you the direct answer to research questions. And similarly with the findings, if you don't write up the analysis in relation to the research questions, but then you'd have difficulty explaining your findings in relation to the research questions, obviously. And then when they come to the discussing the findings, they don't always discuss it in light of the literature review because we want to show what the study is adding to the literature, what new information or insights. So when you don't do that, you wonder if you're doing research, the research that you're doing is actually adding to the body of knowledge for the field. Okay, so Again, I will just hit
Debra, you're muted. No, you have to. You are muted. Debra, we cannot hear you.
Okay, sorry about that.
Ah,
Yeah, I was going to say, what kinds of reactions you've had when you have tried, interventions to help lagging students or faculty who have been having challenges with graduate students? Okay, Christian, I can see you're
oh,
talking,
you
but
cannot hear me. Yeah. See, the thing is, like
okay, yes, now,
research e-clinic.
yeah, now we can hear.
Research e-clinic is a nice concept, and in India we don't have this concept. We have the direct link between a researcher and a supervisor, where everything happens between them, and they are once in every 6 months they do have their doctoral committee meeting. But this is not facilitating them to do it. Whereas your research clinic is a good thing we should adopt. I think it has a lot of opportunity to clarify on the objective, to clarify on the problem, the purpose, the ways of methodologies that should be implemented for solving the problem, and many things. So it is something new one, an eye opener for me. So I wish I would learn a lot more than to ask you a question now.
Thank you, Christian. Okay, so I'm continuing. I hear clearly. Okay, so after the research clinics, which lasted a week, we did, of course, a survey to collect data to find out how helpful the clinics were in reducing the lags in students' research. Remember, this is April, and they are supposed to submit by May. So very helpful would be the green color, and extremely helpful would be the brown color. And you can see from the feedback of the pilot test, it was really very helpful to extremely helpful, especially the literature review, the data analysis, and the methodology chapters. So we felt very pleased that the students were able to find it helpful in reducing their lags. So that's the survey. So I'm going to give you now some qualitative feedback, because we did have open-ended questions on the survey, and these are from the students. One student said, "Your feedback was indeed helpful. It provided a clearer picture on how I should conduct the analysis." Another one said, "I corrected a misconception." Um, this student said, "I was able to select an appropriate data analysis method for my study, which is helping me to move forward with greater confidence that I'm doing what is expected." And this other student said, it is very helpful. A sigh of relief. I now feel like this is possible and I can move forward. Thank you again. And of course, the feedback echoes the helpfulness, and very helpful in terms of the research clinics. I'm going to give you now the faculty reactions, and this was from one former director. We do have a research and innovation pillar within the department, and this also is from the chair. And then we have the Pro Vice Chancellor for Research and Graduate Studies for the entire university. That's the former Pro Vice Chancellor for Research and Graduate Studies. And this is for our entire university. We now have 5 campuses. And he invited me actually to present my research at one of their plenary sessions with all the heads of the graduate research for the different campuses. So I was quite pleased, and that feedback was also very encouraging from that meeting. That would have been over 50 something persons present. So one comment, your initiative has sparked interest in others about how to do things differently at the School of Education. It certainly did for me. Another comment, your innovative e-clinic project will be beneficial to our students. And the Pro-Vice Chancellor actually asked, is the EDRS 6900 course, that's the graduate course that students enroll in when they are completing their master's projects, is the course available to students outside of education, meaning our campus? If not, what would it take to make it so? So he actually wanted the researching clinics to be available to all campuses. So again, that was very encouraging and endorses the work. Now, this would be reactions from faculty from the graduate seminars, because I would actually send them the written feedback via email, and I will have linked resources. You know, if I say, I think that I suggest the title be reworded more concisely and so on and so on, I will actually give a link to an example of how the title for a qualitative, quantitative mixed method study should be. Again, it's not only the students who are benefiting, the faculty also benefit, you know, from that feedback. I will stop sharing and just go over slightly to show you how I do the feedback. So let me just stop sharing here, and then I'm going to share my screen again. I do have some of that. Yeah, let me just, so you get an idea of some of the feedback. Okay, let's see if we could get this. All right, so are you seeing this?
It's still
It might
coming.
be too small.
Yeah, it's coming.
Just
Yeah.
okay. Uh, I'm gonna read it, guys. I suspect it might be a little too small for you. Is it too small for you? Okay.
Yeah, it is small.
Okay. So here's an example. Okay. So like for example, this is some of the feedback I would send. This title says, an investigation into the academic success of the underperforming students at a private primary school in East Trinidad, East Teachers' Perspectives. So I said here, perhaps a slight revision. Okay, let me just, something is blocking my screen. I said perhaps a slight revision can be considered in using exploration, which is more qualitative, and move away from the term underperforming. You can probably use a term that was used in the presentation, like lower stream, for softening the focus of underperformance. Because in the title you have investigation into the academic success, which is opposite to underperforming. You know, so you want to not confuse the reader. And if you say academic success of underperforming lower stream students, it's clearer. And for example, in the background, I suggested here, while the researcher made good observations about the problem, again, you need to reference the importance of have contributed to curriculum implementation reform. And if you click here, I hope you can see, I'm just doing this once. It's going to go into the actual study. Are you seeing this?
Yeah, I'm seeing.
Are you seeing this, Krishna? Yeah, so you give them the study to show, you know, you just don't say that, yeah. So I'm going to close this now. All right, so I'll stop sharing here and I'll go back to my presentation. I just wanted to give you a sense of what
Okay.
what I do in terms of giving feedback, and I'll do that for each section in the proposal, because that would be the introduction section, the methodology, and the literature review and the methodology. So I will give a link, and I'll say you just don't say that you need to hear teachers' voices about what they're doing with underperforming students, but you actually support it with the literature. And this is linked to the point I was making before. They would write, in the introduction and tell you that this act, the No Child Left Behind Act, says that no child should be left behind, blah blah blah, and don't make reference to the fact that the act was up or revised or upgraded to every child should succeed. And so the research then takes on a sort of outdated look when you do it that way. So that's how we help them. So the teachers now, the supervisors, they find these comments that I write and give them the links to research very helpful. Okay, so it seems as if my screen is
Mm,
right. So we are now after the pilot test, and
mm,
we are looking at
mm.
adapting the research clinics. So what the students told us in their feedback in the survey is that the clinics should run for
Mm.
1 month instead of a week. And
Oh
that,
God.
that was quite true,
Mm,
because what we found on the forums when we
mm,
started
mm,
and we did the introduction, we got questions, and we got to the literature review the second day and we got questions. And then we got to the methodology and we got questions. But by the fourth day, which was the data analysis and, um, and, and findings, we hardly got any questions. And then it got worse on Friday. We probably just got one or two questions when it came down to the discussion and conclusion. And obviously, the students said they weren't there yet. They were still working on their three chapters. They didn't collect any data, so they have nothing to analyze, and they can't can't draw any conclusions because they have not collected their data. So we did it afterwards, when the chair for the innovation, research and innovation pillar said that it should be offered to all the master students. We ran it for 1 month instead. So we did 1 week for the introduction, and the second week for the literature review, and so on, so that it gave them time to make their revisions and move on to the next chapter. When the early career researchers group, there's a group in the university that supports early career researchers, when they heard what we were doing, they actually invited me to um, present at one of their meetings, and they wanted us to modify it to support the early career researchers, because it's always a race to keep up with the publications. Now we are requested to have 2 publications per year as tenured, if you're on a tenured track. And that has been ongoing, so that I've met with them several times, and they're looking at implementing, well, modifying the e-clinics for the new faculty. Also suggested in talks with my department for the MPhils and PhD students that they can actually have an e-commons room. PhD students do not do their work, like for 1 year as a master students, in terms of presenting their proposal. Their time is a lot longer. It's over 5 to 7 years. So that what you want is to be able to support them, not just for the deadline, but throughout the
Jesus.
entire period of the 5 years, not just to meet the deadline. And I mean, their issues are a lot more challenging, with data collection and so on. So I propose that that be done, and I'm seeing some inclination that it would be done. We can also extend it into a journal group for publishing for the graduate students, MPhils and PhDs, as well as early career faculty. So you meet online, and you discuss current research from different fields, look at the journals, and you look at how the methodology is done, the conclusions, and so on. So it can help with publishing. And what I think is needed now more than ever is a virtual research academy where universities commit funds, because everything is done online now because of the COVID-19. You commit funds, you set that up, and you train research mentors, and you have the academy for to address these kinds of issues, not just for a deadline. But what I found is new faculty need that mentoring, because even
mm,
in my own second marking, like when these students submit their research theses and master's projects, they have to be
mm,
second mark, and several times I'll be a second marker, and I'll have my marks being different almost by 20 points, 10 points, and you have to go in now. You have to reconcile those marks with the first marker, or you have to go to an external marker, a third marker, to resolve the issue. And I've had that happen several times. So I'm realizing that even the new faculty, they need that mentoring. You need a specific space that they could go and understand how to interpret the rubric. You can have sessions where you do a moderation, or in engineering, you probably will call that calibration, where you
correct,
look
correct.
at the
Mm,
rubric. Yeah, you
yeah.
interpret it, and then you try to mark a paper against the rubric to see, how you're understanding it in a group, and those kinds of initiatives. Or you just have a program where in the academy you train research mentors, and they then mentor other faculty and so on.
Mm,
And so these are some of the ways I think the clinics can be adapted. And
mm,
this is where I would end my presentation. These are my
mm,
references.
mm.
And I want to thank you for being such an attentive audience. And if you have any questions for me.
Yeah, I really have a question. Thing is, Debra, this research
Yes.
e-clinic is something, an innovative way of working. I really give the word called innovation as a kind of a appreciation to this work. The reason is, see, all along, every one of us, every doctoral student who became a PhD, went through a rigorous process of, doing a research. And getting a research completed is by itself a big phenomenon. It's not an easy task. Everyone goes through a peculiar way of doing it. It's something very exclusive to that individual. And this research e-clinic, if it is if it is advertised or if it is getting propaganda in a nice way across the world, I think this will become the future support enabler for every research. I know you are doing a wonderful job, but I have certain questions in this. Okay, can I ask you the question?
Yeah, sure.
One, see,
Go
when
ahead.
you do this research clinic, who is going to pay? Who is going to pay for the participant? I mean, the researcher. If a researcher wants to get your support or your service, then how much should they pay, or through whom that has to be paid to you?
Okay, so our university has a grant fund that faculty can access to
Okay.
do it. And so that's what I did.
Oh.
My research assistant, the bulk of my funding went to pay my research assistant, and I did all the research. What I contributed was really my research. I did it as research. So if you have
Mm,
access to grant funding, that's where your
mm,
your funding will go to pay your researchers or your research assistant. Everything else is what you use, because I use the university resources, the learning management system. They already had a core shell there with all the tools and facilities that I needed for the graduate students who are finishing up their master's projects. You must enroll in that course, and the course is on the learning management system, and I got access to it, and I set it up there. I use my research background to do the knowledge part of it, but my research assistant, most of the funding went towards the research assistant. So what I'll say, Christian, if you do it as a way of conducting research and apply for a grant, you'll be able to get the funding. Because I suspect the universities, they all have learning management systems and those kinds of resources. You use the library, the online databases, yeah. So that's what I think
How
would
about
happen.
in case if a
So you don't have
mentor wants to
pay.
get trained, how should they? If a mentor wants to get trained, a supervisor wants to get trained, early faculties, how do they get?
Now, some universities do have those programs under their research and graduate studies unit. Each university will have such a unit, and they would normally host workshops for the research supervisors and mentors. The graduate studies department, the overall graduate studies unit in your university, you can approach them to host those sessions, those mentoring sessions. And again, that may take, it may not be a priority for the university. So you just have to invest your time. Invest your time, go out and, use a blog or get a platform, set up a Google Classroom, a few free platform, and just go with it and do it. And I think when they see the results, then they would be willing sometimes to invest the time and money. But some of these initiatives, you just have to do it. There are also free mentoring initiatives online. Edit Edge, that there's a whole host of resources there. That's free. That's online, and you can also pay for it. With the professional organizations, the research organizations that lead research, they do have such programs, and you have to pay. You have to pay for it.
I have one last question before I pass on the question to Chipere. Thing is like, if, Debra, you are a specialist towards the humanities and English language. Would you take even engineering researchers into your focus for supporting them to your e-clinics? Or is there any
for
support?
the right? Yeah, for the writing, the academic writing, we can do that. But the actual research, you would need specialists in engineering research to advise students properly. Yeah. But we are more, I'm more in education and humanities. But certainly you can team up with, the researchers in engineering, in science and technology, in creative arts. Yeah, sure. Bioscience, yeah.
Okay. Right, nice. Yeah, thank you. Dr. Chupuri, would you like to have a question?
Thank you. I don't have any question, just an appreciation. No. Thank you, Dr. Debra, for this wonderful presentation and the insight. But okay, something came on board right now. If a student want to get access to these resources, how can they be able to do it?
Correct. Nice question.
Yeah, Well, this is where we'll have to come together probably and offer it on a global scale as a global resource.
No, naturally, Debra,
we,
this is what I was
yeah.
thinking. Research, you're a teacher with teaching on technology.
Yes. Yeah, we'll have to come together and actually replicate it as a global resource because the university has closed systems. The LMS is only open to students who enroll in the university, and all the library resources. They can easily enter their uh, it's either their student number or their email, the university email to access the resources and so on, our librarians. Yeah, but it's a good question.
And Dr. Debra, I have one extended question of Dr. Chukure. Chukure. Thing is like Professor Chukure is from South Africa. Okay, if we want some of the students to get benefit through you, and if the student is willing to bear the cost, is it possible for you to support them?
We'd have to. I would not want to go there, and to put a price on the clinics and so on, because we haven't packaged it, and
No, the
the
university can
legal
take it.
implications. Yeah,
Oh,
yeah, but if it's a
okay.
university initiative, then I'd have to discuss that, and find out how they would want to move or go in that direction. But right now, it's really open to our university students. But I see where you're coming from, so that others, and the pro vice chancellor for graduate research and graduate studies, the former pro vice chancellor, actually had that in mind when he asked, is it available in all the 5 campuses? So yes, there's a very relevant question, and what I would ask is if we could engage on an initiative where we offer it, just as we're doing the global resource webinars, the world resource webinars, sorry, where we can possibly think of setting it up and we have sessions, webinars, and we run it and structure it that way it will address, the different chapters. And then people can come on from all over the world and ask the questions and so on. Yeah, that's what I think would be in these times, in these trying times, because it's a very trying time for most persons all over the world. You have persons losing their jobs, and that
Yes.
alone in itself is a stress. They may not have the funds as would have happened before when they were working and so on. It's a very trying time now. Yeah.
No, it's more than a recession that is being affecting the world today. And people who are interested now may not get the same amount of grant like what at our age we got it. So they will be still having a tighter budget. Okay. So within that tight, resource support, they have to do it. So they may have to, have a support elsewhere other than the normal stream. I think research clinic is a nice way. Okay. Any other questions from anybody? Okay. If no one is going to ask, then I leave the floor to Tilak. Tilak?
Okay. Due to Corona, and there are so many problems in the world and things, still we are conducting certain sessions, and Debra was kind enough to explain to us and the complete things. We thank her very much for her time, irrespective of the 12 hours time difference and all this. She is able to help us to get things done. We thank her, and we thank all the participants, and Umachandran for arranging, and Purushothaman for arranging for recording and all this. And welcome everyone for our next session. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Very welcome. Have a nice time. Bye.
Okay. Keep in touch. We'll have more sessions.
Sure.